Hello, and welcome to Pragmatic Live, Pragmatic Marketing's webinar and podcast series where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product teams. My name is Rebecca Calageris. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Sales at Pragmatic Marketing, and more importantly to you, the host for today's event. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. First, a recording of this webinar and a copy of the slides will be available afterwards. We'll be emailing them out, and you'll be able to access them by the end of the day at pragmaticmarketing.com/live. Second, questions. We love questions. If you look to the left of your screen, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to enter any and all questions you have for us in that box, and we'll work hard to get through as many of those as we can today. Now, many of you are already familiar with Pragmatic Marketing, but for those of you not aware of us until today, welcome to the family. We specialize in training companies and product teams on how to be truly market-driven. We provide techniques for listening to the market and gathering market facts, and then using those facts to shape strategies and drive execution. And we've been doing this and doing it quite successfully for over 20 years. Today's topic is one right at the heart of who Pragmatic is and what we do: the importance of truly understanding your market's problems and the transformative power that can have on your products, your company, and your career. Helping us address this topic is one of our very own instructors, Paul Young, who has seen the power of market-driven firsthand, not only in his own career, but in that of the thousands of students he has taught. So, without further ado, here's Paul.
Wow, thanks, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone, or depending on where you're logging in from, good afternoon or good evening. To start today off, I'd like to take you back in time. It's the early 2000s, and on a cold, icy winter day, outside of a faceless office building in a nondescript office park, the wind howls as a product manager climbs into his car after a rough day at work. He told me that he was finished, mentally and physically, because his ideas kept getting shot down, and he felt like he kept getting run around by engineers and executives instead of leading his team. That day had been a pretty typical one for him because he had just finished his last conference call of the day, of 7 conference calls in a row. Imagine that, 7 hours of conference calls without a break. Can you feel his frustration? I know that I can. Maybe that sounds like a day in your life. And he was about to give up too, before he realized how the market could transform his career. We'll find out what happened with him a little bit later. But today, we're going to talk about how to go down a different path than the one that I just described. A trail that's been blazed by some of your peers to harness their knowledge of the market and its problems to transform their company, their careers, and themselves. And by the end of this presentation, my hope is that we're going to be able to inspire you to embark upon a similar journey to transform yourself as well. So for those of you I haven't met, my name is Paul Young. I'm an instructor with Pragmatic Marketing, and welcome to the first Pragmatic Live webinar of 2015. As Rebecca said, every month we highlight a box on the Pragmatic Marketing framework, and we do our best to bring you interesting and talented people from around the world to share their thoughts with you. This month, Pragmatic Marketing asked me to come talk about our market problems box, and that's a huge honor because this is our bread and butter, and I'm humbled to be here with you, leading you through this session today. I've been an instructor with Pragmatic Marketing for about 5 years, and I live this stuff. Before I was an instructor, I was in your shoes. I was a product manager, I was a product marketer, and I led teams of the same across companies both large and startups. But today isn't about me. It's about some of the people that we at Pragmatic Marketing have met and how they've applied the market to their particular situations. I have been blown away by the power of their stories, and I think that you will be as well. So we want to be really clear about the objectives that you're going to achieve in today's webinar and what we hope that you take away. First, we have 4 really powerful stories and case studies from some of our alumni and how they use the power of the market and its knowledge to positively affect their organizations. Second, through those stories, there's some key lessons that we can share about how simply applying market data in the right situation can have an enormous impact on your career. And then third, we're going to end with a discussion of some of the biggest traps that people fall into when they try to take this journey to becoming market-driven, and we'll give you some tactics to avoid those pitfalls. So we really hope that you find today both informative and useful. In my travels, I've been struck by the stories that your peers have shared with me about their experiences, and I cannot wait to share them with you today. Our first story is about a product manager we met named Kevin. Kevin was put in an unfortunate situation of having to kill off a product idea. Now, wouldn't you think that implies failure? I mean, killing off a product can't be a good thing. But as Kevin's story is going to show us, we can define success in a lot of different ways. Kevin works for a mid-sized hardware company named Cirrus. Cirrus builds sophisticated testing and equipment rigs for use in telecom, manufacturing, and aircraft industries. Many times those industries find it very difficult to chase down wiring faults on the factory floor, especially in a large, complex product like an airplane. So companies go to Cirrus to get equipment to test their wiring faster and more thoroughly than they could otherwise do themselves. Kevin started his career as an engineer, and he was frustrated as he was on the engineering team and found that the company was guided primarily around the founder's visions, and his team was, quote, disconnected from understanding the market. He found that the roadmap was driven based on the founder's opinions and what we at Pragmatic Marketing call the noisy 20%. Kevin knew in his gut that something wasn't right, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. That's when he and his peers started to read about being market-driven in books like The Lean Startup by Eric Ries and on some of the publications that we produce. Kevin knew what direction he needed to go, but there was always a fire to fight. In fact, one of those fires was a new product. One very loud customer had advocated strongly for the company to build a specific custom product. In fact, Kevin told me they promised to buy hundreds of them, and the company expected to sell them elsewhere as well. It's a bold promise. So what did the reality look like? Well, as you can imagine, it looked something like this. Unfortunately, after making the investment to build the product, the promises from that noisy customer evaporated. Not only did they not buy the product, hardly anyone else did either, and it was a near total loss. This is when Kevin met us at one of our pragmatic trainings. After the training, Kevin took some actions to figure out his gaps and realized that understanding the market's problems was a major gap. And he put a plan in place to start getting more market data. Not long after, Kevin's founder retired, and Kevin knew that now was the time to strike. He resolved to apply market data to future product decisions and put a process in place to get more data by talking to customers regularly. There we go. Soon, the opportunity to use his new market knowledge came about. The VP of sales was pushing really hard to develop a new product that they were calling LightSight. LightSight was the result of conversations with customers at trade shows over a series of years. Technicians who rewire small aircraft have a problem understanding the continuity and quality of the wires in the aircraft. Unlike other products, it's expensive and time-consuming and potentially dangerous to disassemble an airplane to chase down a wiring issue. The idea was to create a product that would solve this problem without the need to take the entire airplane apart. Kevin told me that they built a low-cost initial prototype to show the market and get feedback. That's what we call an acid test. The feedback, however, was mixed. Customers said that they saw potential in the idea, but they didn't exhibit enough excitement or willingness to pay for the solution to go out and justify a full product development. Kevin told me that prior to our new market-driven process, we would have put a year of work into development. We would have gone out and created plans and specifications. We would have manufactured circuit boards and PCBs. We would have created documentation. But instead, Kevin said, we went and stole some parts from other products. we painted a PVC pipe black, and we shipped out a basic prototype to users for feedback in the field and at the trade shows where we originally heard the problem. Kevin brought the VP of Sales to those feedback meetings so that the VP could hear those reactions firsthand directly from the market. And as a result, once the VP saw the mixed feedback, he bought into and championed, along with Kevin, that they should not move forward with the project. Kevin still thinks that the problem has potential, but they're going to need to apply market tests to some other solutions, and he's going to be the one to lead that discussion. So how does Kevin's story end? Well, Kevin used market data to transform his company from inside out to outside in. The company saved a lot of money by not building a product that they would have otherwise built. And as a result, Kevin was rewarded with recognition and a bigger role. In just 18 months, his role expanded, and now he's running product management and a large part of marketing for the entire company. He also told me that he loves his job now, and his entire outlook has changed. In fact, he told me, and I quote, "When I decided to do my master's in engineering, I did so knowing that I wouldn't always be a technical engineer. I didn't know what I would be. I thought maybe a manager, technical sales, or most likely an entrepreneur. But for now, I think that it might end up being a product manager. I think I might have finally found what I want to be when I grow up." Isn't the power of market data amazing? It had a huge impact on Kevin's career and his company. So let's look at some of the lessons we can take from Kevin. First of all, we learned that we don't just get market data to justify about what needs to be built. We also use it to prevent the organization from wasting money building the wrong things. Second, we learned that prototyping is a key element of gathering market data, and it doesn't need to be expensive. You could paint a PVC pipe black and ship out some stolen parts from other products just to get some quick feedback. And third, it's not enough to just get the data about the market. We have to make our peers and our executives our partners by exposing them directly to the market, just like Kevin did. Kevin is a great story and an example I think we can all aspire to replicate. But now let's take a more product marketing view of the market through the story embodied by Joyce. Joyce and her story come from my home state of Texas. And it shows how one product marketer harvested the power of listening to the market and her entrepreneurial spirit to form some truly amazing results. In fact, she went from what I call a copywriter to chief story officer, if you will. Joyce worked on the solutions marketing team at a large company in the Dallas area. And she told me that her team was more capabilities driven and oriented, not so much focused on customer problems in how they messaged or positioned to the market. She became really frustrated that the market data that they were bringing in was just being, in her words, put on a binder on a shelf. It was more of a check-the-box item that you would go talk to the market and not something that the teams were actually using on a day-to-day basis. Joyce knew that there was more to the market than just checking the box on her annual review. Once, Joyce told me that she was under pressure to produce some market-facing messaging and realized that they didn't actually use any customer language in their positioning. She was frustrated by this, but she had to appease her executive team, who was demanding new collateral right now. Maybe that sounds familiar to many of you. Later, Joyce was able to move to a different company in the oil and gas industry. And as it turns out, this company had made the shift to market-driven long ago, before Joyce had joined. And this is the time where this company sent Joyce to some additional training with Pragmatic Marketing, our market and launch classes, where she learned how to apply market knowledge in some new ways. Specifically, she learned how to go out and research buyer and user personas. As a result of what she learned, she was able to get out into the field and have conversations with buyers and users, but most specifically buyers, and have deep conversations about their background, how they purchased, what kind of information they were looking for at what stage of the buying process, and so on. And as a result, they were able to rework their positioning in a much more market-facing way. When they rolled out this new positioning, they found that it was much more readily accepted by their sales team. In fact, Joyce told me that one of her sales leaders even said, "You've moved us from copywriting to telling great stories, and we can't wait to use this." That's an amazing buy-in from a sales team. I know that many of you work with sales today, and we would love to get a quote like this from our sales team. So maybe we can do the same thing. The success that Joyce saw made her realize her true calling. It wasn't enough for her to just help one company make this shift. She wanted to help lots of companies make a similar shift in their storytelling. And as a result, Joyce recently left the corporate world to start her own business, which she calls Storied Up. Storied Up's mission is to help companies evolve their positioning from copywritten buzzword bingo to stories that make a connection and are deeply personal. Storied Up has only existed for a few months, but she already has 4 eager customers, and it's her full-time gig. In fact, today Joyce told me that she's working toward creating a diverse, thriving business in technology that she can make a truly big impact with. In fact, Joyce really blew me away because she has gained so much confidence from her market-driven shift that she told me, "Paul, I'm not going back to a 9-to-5 gig anymore. I'm motivated by so much more than that." She found the key to work-life balance as an entrepreneur fueled by the market. Wow, it's incredible to think about how a change in her focus had such a huge impact on her career and on her life. To me, Joyce's story is a powerful example of a couple of things. First of all, many times people think that knowing the market and gaining market knowledge is just the domain of product management or a product manager, and it's not. Clearly, that's not true. Joyce shows us how much benefit marketing professionals gain in their role with market knowledge. Second, one of the biggest challenges that we see year over year is companies struggling with their positioning. Instead of speaking to their buyers and users in plain language, they use jargon and buzzwords. Joyce cracked the code, and so too can you. It's firsthand knowledge of the market that enables us to produce better positioning. Third, many of you watching this presentation have had entrepreneurial dreams of your own. You might even have that next big idea that's going to transform your market. If you want the same type of success that Joyce is building at Storied Up, we have to make sure that we build on a foundation of market knowledge. That's going to be building our house on rock instead of sand. I can't be more proud of Joyce, and it really warms my heart to tell her story. Next, let's take a brief look at how knowing the market can impact your career from an executive perspective. Pretty interesting. The subject of our next case study, his name is Mark. I call Mark the lighthouse because when he entered his organization, he stood like that shining beacon on the shore and guided his team through a rough storm to a better tomorrow. And as you see his story, I think you'll agree that the result was well worth his perseverance. First of all, Mark works at a mid-sized company that solves problems in the intellectual property and legal industries. In fact, his company is so specialized that Mark described it to me as a niche within a niche. As a result, his team has a lot of specialized industry experience. They've got a lot of strong, opinionated leaders in their engineering team and on their executive team that Mark was faced with when he came in. The business model that Mark's company follows is software, specifically cloud-based software as a service, and also premise-based software that they sell to law firms and corporations. When Mark originally entered this company, he was looking after one product, and his title was product leader. And what he found as he took over the team was, well, in a word, troubling. He told me that, or rather he described the situation as cowboy coding and Wild West decision making. In other words, it was completely inside out. In fact, when he asked to see the roadmap for the very first time, he was dismayed to see that the majority of the roadmap items were driven by technology and engineering, not by customer or market needs. In addition, product quality was also floundering. Promises were being made and not delivered. They were being broken by sales, executives, and engineering. Roadmap dates were being regularly missed. And worst of all, the SaaS application that he was taking over was suffering from downtime and outages, sometimes for days at a time. Clearly not a good situation. So as a first step, Mark got some customer data via phone conversations, what I would refer to as the low-hanging fruit. As a result of the limited market data that he was able to get in the beginning, they were able to immediately refactor their roadmap and remove some of the items that just didn't make sense for the market. The situation started to improve, but it wasn't going fast enough. Mark told me that his sales team often found out about features days after they were released. Can you imagine finding out about things after the release, perhaps in a customer demo, or maybe reading the release notes? That's not a good situation. What had happened was that sometimes the engineering team would just come up with their own quote-unquote great ideas and then add them to the product without informing anyone. Mark knew what he had to do next. He was ready to start applying deeper market knowledge to fix those types of problems. What he did was he introduced and committed the team to changing their ways to become outside in. And he started to put in a regular process for gathering market data. We call that Nihito at Pragmatic Marketing, or nothing important happens in the office, meaning that he committed himself and his team to bringing outside-in information from the market back into the building continuously. And the way that he did it was fascinating. I'll show you in just a moment. He also introduced the engineering team to Agile's Scrum methodologies and put a premium on quick, frequent feedback from the market. In addition, he championed the hiring of a business analyst and a user experience team members to help the process move along faster. Mark told me that he wanted to bake regular contact with the market into his weekly schedule. And his process for recruiting people from the market to talk to, I found amazing in both its power and its simplicity. Mark told me that he maintains a huge database of market contacts. These could be customers, buyers, users. They could also be non-customers like potentials. And he says that every Monday, he sends out 25 emails from his list. And he sends them a note explaining who he is and what his role is in the organization. And he tells them that he would love to get their feedback and wants to know their availability for a quick conversation anytime in the next 2 weeks. Sometimes the result of those are phone calls. Sometimes they're face-to-face meetings. But as a result of sending out those 25 emails every single week, Mark told me that he's able to maintain a tempo of at least 3 market contacts every single week. And all that it costs him are a few minutes of emailing. As a result of this fresh market data that's coming in to their process, Mark's team was able to further pare down the roadmap to just the critical items and start rebuilding trust with the key stakeholders, like sales. And the results have been dramatic, to say the least. In the last 18 months, Mark told me that since he's instituted these changes, they've had 3 major product releases. All of them were on time, all of them were on scope, and all of them gained rapid acceptance and uptake from the market. It doesn't get a whole lot better than that. But being the lighthouse, Mark was not content just to stop there. He wanted to go even further in bringing market data into the building and using it to drive the product. So he and his team redoubled and looked for other places where they could examine market data to get even better results. and they started to look at how their customers were extending the product using things like APIs and SDKs. And what they found was both fascinating and frightening. What they found was that their customers were writing their own custom code to add features and functionalities to the product. And in fact, Mark told me that when we found some of the customers and we looked at their code, we realized that they were instituting and creating security holes in the product based on some of the changes that they were making. As the team started to look beyond the data and the changes, what they realized was that they could use their new market problem focus to drive for a better result. What they found was that many of their customers were using their own custom Java language and code to essentially solve a very similar set of problems within the product. And after a few discussions, Mark and his team realized that they could solve those same set of problems in a different way without the kinds of security issues that customers had inadvertently introduced. As a result, Mark and his team built a whole new product based on this new set of market problems. And Mark told me that they now have a big leg up on the competition and a key differentiator, all because of market contact and looking at the data and asking what problem are they trying to solve. It's clear how positive this shift to reliance on market contact and market knowledge has been for his company. But the dedication to the market has also served Mark well as well. His team was so successful that the company recognized Mark with a promotion to director. He now has responsibility for 4 products and a team of over 20, all dedicated to using market data to make the company successful. Isn't that incredible? His creativity to bring market knowledge into his company paid off enormously for his organization and for him. Mark teaches us a few key lessons. First, we don't have to accept our world as it is. Mark shows us that it is possible to change yourself and to change your culture from inside out to outside in. In fact, other teams like engineering highly value market knowledge, and they're going to love to see you bring this information into the organization as well. Mark also shows us that going out to get market data doesn't have to mean a $100,000 research project. It's perfectly acceptable to start small. Start with a few emails, a few phone calls, a few Nahito visits, and then grow from there. Finally, having the curiosity to always ask why can lead you down paths that result in new products that you hadn't even considered before. And the results, in my mind, truly speak for themselves. If you follow Mark's example, then recognition and reward are sure to follow. Our final case study is from another Pragmatic Marketing alumni named Kamal. Kamal is the one that I refer to as the disruptor, because what you're going to see is that he and his team were able to disrupt an entire industry and an entire set of business models based on market knowledge. It's pretty amazing, actually. Kamal worked for a major worldwide testing organization, and he was the global strategy and business manager. The company he worked for would maintain testing laboratories that other companies like manufacturers would send their products to in order to make sure that they would, quote unquote, fail gracefully. You know, if you want to make sure that your new microwave doesn't burn down your customer's house when they forget that they left a fork in the microwave, then you would send it to Kamal's company. As an added benefit, manufacturers would also need to deploy Kamal's company's seal of approval on their product to indicate that it was safe before they were allowed to sell it into certain markets. In fact, if you flip over many of the consumer electronics in your home or office today, you'll see this mark on your product. In the early to mid-2000s, the European Union started a program designed to greatly reduce the amount of hazardous materials, such as lead, mercury, chromium, and polybrominated diphenyl ethers. I'm sure I just mangled that word, in their products. And this set of compliance testing was referred to RoHS, or RoHS, the reduction of hazardous substances. Testing labs all over the world started to spin up programs to certify that electronics were free of these materials, or at least had them in the right volumes. And it's no trivial task to do this kind of test. I mean, think about the keys on the keyboard in the computer in front of you. They contain colored plastic. They contain a spring so that it bounces back when you push on it. They contain some amount of paint for the letter or number. All of those things have to be scraped. They have to be tested. They have to be analyzed. And they have to be certified that they don't contain those 6 types of materials that you see before you. Now multiply that test that I just described times every piece in every consumer electronics everywhere. And you can start to see how this is a really big business. Kamal entered this picture as a manager, and his company was faced with reacting to this rapid set of changes and competitors that were popping up in the market. And his charter was go catch up with the competition. Copy the competition's certification offering as fast as possible. Now, to Kamal, that didn't quite sound right. And he and his team didn't accept that just copying the competition was going to be the right answer. And so what they did was they went out and talked to the market to learn more before they just went off and started to blindly copy the competition. They scheduled a series of market visits with key customers to ask what those customers thought of the testing programs that were currently available from their competition. The feedback was consistent. The current testing programs that were available were seen as too expensive, taking too long, and they tested things that manufacturers already knew were compliant. When Kamal showed this data to the executive team at his company, they were reluctant to react because, after all, the competition had built this thriving business model based on testing every individual product as it was released. You know, when you released a 2013 version of your device, we would test it, and then you would come with the 2014 version, and we would test it. Same with the 2015 version, and so on. And every year, we would test we would test the product soup to nuts, the entire product. But Kamal knew that he should push forward and get more market data, even though the executive team was, exhibiting a little bit of reluctance. So what he did was he and his team scheduled some more meetings with the market, and after a while, they cracked the code of what was wrong with their competitors' business models. Every time a manufacturer was releasing a new version of their product, it had to go through a completely new round of testing. But just like cars, how different is the 2015 version of a Blu-ray player from the 2014 version? Usually it's not that much different, and they exhibit a high degree of commonality in their parts and components. So Kamal and his team flipped the testing model on its head. Instead of testing entire products every time they got released, he and his team proposed to break out all the individual components within a product and test them individually for compliance. So now they would break it down and test all the things that went into the product, like the PCBs, the memory, the power supplies, the wires and sheathing, the paint, the keyboards, and they would test and certify the piece parts. This way, manufacturers and, more importantly, their suppliers could choose to use parts that were already certified, and that would mean a drastic improvement in both the time to market and their testing and certification costs. At the time of launch with this solution, Kamal's company was, let's just say they were experiencing some trepidation. After all, nothing like this had ever really been tried before. But Kamal and his team were confident because they knew that the market data backed them up. And of course, the rollout was a huge success. One demonstration of that success was that he told me that some of their largest clients, like Carrier, Sun, and US Robotics, actually called his company's switchboard and were transferred by the operator to Kamal because they didn't know where else to send them. And Kamal was able to sign them up for this new service before they even talked to a salesperson. Clearly, you're onto something in the market when your customers are cold calling you And so I think that's a pretty amazing story of success about how Kamal was able to apply market knowledge to his particular situation. So the results were an enormous success for the company Kamal worked for. In fact, due to the disruption that Kamal's team brought to the testing and certification industry, all of his major competitors eventually copied that business model that his team pioneered. And as a result, Kamal was recruited out to go to a new company with an expanded role where he was able to continue applying market knowledge in his situation. In fact, Kamal told me that his entire perspective has shifted based on this experience. He says that he now combats inside-out thinking by asking the question, are we finding a problem for our solution, or are we finding the customer's true problem? That's a pretty marvelous accomplishment. Isn't it fascinating how powerful a little market knowledge can be? In this case, it disrupted an entire industry, and Kamal told me that the division of this company that he was a part of is now in the hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenue, and its margins are sky high. It doesn't get much better. So Kamal teaches us that whether you're looking for incremental enhancements for your next minor product launch or you're trying to disrupt a stale and stagnant industry, knowing the market is key. We've seen some amazing successes from Kevin, Joyce, Mark, and Kamal today. And my wish is that every single one of you has the same success. So what prevents people from getting there? If the results are so compelling to be market-driven, and we would argue at Pragmatic Marketing that they are, why aren't we all doing this already? In our experience at Pragmatic Marketing, we have formed some strong hypotheses about why people don't get there based on what we've heard and seen in the market over the past 20-plus years. From least to most prevalent, let's now go over some of the top barriers, the top 5 barriers that prevent people from being market-driven and how to overcome them. And then we'll go to some Q&A as well. First of all, I hear people saying all the time when I'm out there in the field teaching, hey, I just don't know how to listen to the market. And thankfully, this is one of the easiest ones to solve. We can follow Mark's lead. 3 calls per week. Can you get 3 market touches a week? Can you send 25 emails a week? Most of you, I'm guessing, have a customer database somewhere that you could start with. That doesn't cost you anything other than a half an hour of sending emails and then maybe a little bit of time on the phone. That's a great starting point. And if you don't know what to do once you get the meeting, that is also a solvable problem. There are all sorts of places you can learn about how to conduct market research and how to conduct an interview in the market once you get a Nahito visit. You can take one of our trainings. We also have a lot of free materials available on the web. There's also any number of texts that you could go read on this topic. But the point is, this one's on you. If you don't feel comfortable conducting a market research visit or a field conversation with a customer, it's as simple as cracking open a book or signing up for a training to go figure out how. So luckily, that one's pretty easy. The second big challenge that we hear from people about why they can't be market-driven is, I am overwhelmed with the monotony of the routine. Routine meetings, routine emails, they got me down. That's all I'm doing. You know what? I can empathize with that because we have to keep the lights on. But there's no time like the present, especially now since it's the start of a new year, to comb through your schedule and ask yourself the question, do you really need to be in all those meetings? Is there anybody else who can go in your stead? Or are you truly the only resource in the company who can go? If that's really the case, I would ask you the question, can you train someone to be your replacement and go in your stead? We always want to be efficient, but remember, it is irrelevant how efficient your company is if you're building the wrong product. And so we have to make sure that we get the market knowledge first before we focus on going to engineering stand-ups or going to bug triage meetings or any of the other stuff that we find ourselves doing. Ultimately, I find that this one boils down to overcoming your fear of saying no. If you can't say no to anything, are you managing your product or are you managing the project? The third most prevalent objection I hear to being market-driven is this one. My role definition prevents me from accessing the market. Sometimes it's just not part of your role. At Pragmatic Marketing, we're strong believers that all of the members of the product team need to touch the market. So if your role is preventing you from accessing the market, then it's incumbent upon you to have a conversation about changing your role. Talk with your executive team about the power of market data, show them this webinar, share with them some of the other resources that we provide, and let them know that you want to champion bringing that market data into the building. Start small. Talk to a handful of customers, a handful of potentials, and then show the value of that market data and how it can affect your decision-making in a positive way, and then grow it from there. Or alternatively, go into the market with somebody who's already going there, like sales or professional services, and then use your unique perspective on the market to ask a better set of questions and then grow it from there. There's no such thing as a perfect market visit. I would rather have something than nothing. So let's start with something and then go from there. What you'll find is that once people start to see the value that you add to those conversations and the questions that you ask, they're going to thirst for more. And so let's get it started. The number two reason that I hear people say they can't go out into the market is I don't have any budget for travel. I don't have any budget for what's called T&E, travel and entertainment. Therefore, I can't be market-driven, Paul, because I just can't get outside of my building. Well, guess what? I don't accept that as an excuse. Becoming an expert on the market doesn't mean that you need to spend a ton of money. There are lots of creative ways that we can save money on market research, and we can do these for extremely low cost and in some cases even zero cost. For example, we could reuse trips that are already occurring. If you're already going out into the field, for example, you're going to a trade show, you're going to an industry event, you're going to a customer advisory board, sales has pulled you into the field to show a roadmap or to help do a demo for our client. Well, guess what? If you're already hopping on an airplane, you're in the field. Why not use that trip for another purpose? Can we latch onto those things that are already happening? Secondly, find a map, drop a pin in your home office, and draw a 100-mile radius around that pin. What I'm guessing is that surely you can find some customer or evaluator or potential within a 100-mile drivable radius that you can go talk to without incurring an overnight hotel stay or even a flight. Those are very inexpensive ways to contact the market that don't take anything more than just a little bit of legwork and elbow grease. And so that's a really good starting point. And if all those fail, then we can go back to that old standby, the telephone. All things being equal, I would prefer that you get into the market and experience someone face-to-face. But if that's not possible, the phone is a lot better than nothing, and it's a great starting point. And once people start to see some of the value that you're able to bring just from what you're able to get over the phone, then you can step in and say, if I got this over the phone, imagine what I could do with 1 week in the field. Again, it starts with us, and it's all it takes is a little bit of legwork. And then finally, the number one reason that we hear people say, I can't do this, is all the tactical day-to-day firefighting that comes up. You don't know what it's going to be today, you don't know what it's going to be tomorrow, but there's always a fire to be fought. This could be sales, demanding your time to come do a demo. I'm sure many of you have had this experience where a salesperson calls you up and says, hey, remember that demo you gave us last week? I've got a client on the other line, and they could really use that demo. You think you could hop on the line and help us out? Or this could also be an engineering team pulling you in to talk about a Sev 1 bug, or maybe asking you to come to their meeting that they just called. Or maybe this is your executive team demanding your input on the latest loud customer request. All of those fires are important to put out. But if you spend all of your time jumping from fire to fire, then you become what I refer to as a professional firefighter. Once your organization finds out that you are good at putting out fires, then guess what? Fires tend to come to your doorstep for fixing. But it also goes in the other direction. So I would propose that you try an experiment. For 1 week, starting next week, don't put out any fires. I want you to quote unquote be unavailable. One of two things will happen when you do this. Either the rest of the organization will step up and put out the fires on their own, or the supposed important fire will burn itself out because it really wasn't that important. Either way, you've freed up your time. I would say try that for a week. Your organization can survive for a week without you putting out every fire. After you've tried it for a week, if it's working, expand it to a month. And soon you're going to find a whole new outlook because your time has shifted and now you have the ability to be in the market. There are reasons for every single thing on this list, but if you allow issues like these to control your life, it results in chaotic decision-making driven by emotion, opinion, and loud voices. And the result will be a lack of focus and nothing getting done. And to make it even worse, the blame could fall to you. And so that's why I want us all to commit to fixing these issues right now. But I'm really interested in hearing what challenges you guys have when it comes to being market-driven. And so I want to hand it back over to Rebecca here for a few minutes. We've left about 5 or 10 minutes to do a little bit of Q&A to hear what kinds of challenges you guys have. And then maybe I can help you with some of those as well as we kind of finish out today's call. So Rebecca, do we have any questions that people would like answered about how to be market-driven?
We certainly do. We have a couple of common themes, so we're going to try and architecture these up into the problems they're having that you can solve for them. The first thing they want to talk about is how to determine the right people to talk to. How do they build a list of customers and particularly potentials that they can reach out to?
Yeah, so many of you in this webinar have come to a pragmatic marketing training in the past, so you're familiar with our terminology, but I can't assume that everyone is. So if you'll just grant me 15 seconds to put some vocabulary words in place. At Pragmatic Marketing, we break a market segment into 3 major groups called customers, evaluators, and potentials. Customers are the ones who are using something, probably your product or a competitor's product. Evaluators are the group that is currently shopping. And then potentials are the group that we think should be using our product, but for whatever reason aren't. And so the question is, how do we identify across those 3 groups who the right ones are to talk to? And I'll kind of take a few seconds to talk about each one. First of all, let's talk about customers. Customers can be divided into our customers and competitors' customers. And when you try to figure out which are the right ones to talk to, let's start by identifying the ones that probably aren't the right ones to go seek out. And those are the noisy ones, the ones that are calling tech support, the ones that call up and say, I'm using your product in a way it wasn't intended to be used. Could you please transfer me to engineering? Those are the ones that we probably don't need to go seek out because guess what? They're going to find us. They're what we call the noisy 20%. And so we need to find the other set, which is the quiet 80%, the ones who aren't proactively calling. And the way that we find those, there's a lot of ways, but my favorite way would be to look into your customer database, probably your tech support database, and I would try to find those customers who called us once or twice during the implementation process, but then they've never called back. And I want to find out why have they not called back. Is it because they use our product all the time and they find it easy to use, or is it because they tried to use our product, they got set up, and then they found it so difficult to use that they gave up? And that's a really good way to find that quiet 80% in your customer base, those people who got implemented but now they're not using. We can use the noisy 20% for a purpose, but just recognize the noisy 20% probably doesn't represent your entire market. They represent those who care enough to pick up the phone and call you, and that's not the majority of your users. So that's customers. For evaluators, it's a very easy equation. We turn to what's called win-loss analysis, and we try to figure out why are we winning and why are we losing. Hopefully you should have a sales funnel that your sales team can turn you onto that will give you some insight as to when and where you're losing deals, and then your job is now going to be to answer the why. Why are we losing deals? Or why are we winning deals for that matter? And that's as simple as getting and extracting the list from sales, which I don't want to trivialize, can sometimes be a big task, but it's incumbent upon us to help sales understand how this will benefit them. That's a whole other topic. And then finally we have potentials, and that's the hardest group to recruit. And people always ask me, how do I find a potential? How do I find somebody who should be using my product but isn't, and they're not using anything today? Potentials are kind of a very fuzzy group, and they exist in a couple places, but I would say that the single easiest place to find a potential is within your customer base. Because remember, just because someone is a customer of one of your products, that means that they might be a potential for another product. And so usually the easiest way to find a potential is to find the customer of another product who isn't using the one you're thinking of. They could be a potential for yours, and then start with there. Oftentimes they can introduce you to their peers, other companies, and once you start going down that chain and pulling on that string, you'll find that you get access to a whole bunch of other people. Once you get access to them, the conversations that you have, the questions that you drive, and the information that you discover will, by and large, populate your next set of questions and who you're going to go talk to. So I hope that answered the overall question, who do we talk to and how?
Great. Another big question is about how do they get it, the market data that they do collect, how do they get it out of their desktop and share it internally, right? How do they keep it from just being in their head and to share it with executives in particular and some of their other peer groups?
Yeah, great question, and unfortunately one that there's not a super great answer to yet. There are companies that are working on some of this stuff right now, but by and large the market for product team software and tools to share that data is not what I would consider to be very mature, although I think that will change over the next 5 years. For now, I can tell you based on our survey, most people use some combination of Microsoft Office tools. They use SharePoints and folders and Word docs, and they email stuff around and so on. And as you could probably imagine, a lot of people are frustrated with those solutions because they don't work very well. But I can tell you some of the things that I've done with my teams in the past is maybe once every other week or once a month, depending on how often we were doing Nihito visits, I would like to schedule what I would call like a lunch and learn, where it would be like a brown bag. I would invite anybody who wanted to come, and in that meeting, everyone who had gone into the market since the last meeting of that type would get up and present what they learned. And it would simply be a venue for people to stand up and share their experiences, what they saw in the market. Sometimes the result of that would be 2 or 3 or 4 different people seeing a common theme that would start turning on light bulbs. And I would really like to bring the engineering team or some representative from the engineering team to that meeting, because when you turn on their light bulbs, magical things start to occur. So, once they start to hear that market data and they start to see that trend across a couple of different people, they might say, wow, you know what, we could solve that problem, and it's only going to take, 2 hours worth of changes to the product. And those are the kinds of conversations we can foster. So I prefer to share that data face-to-face wherever possible, because everyone suffers from email overload, and so anytime you can put that information face-to-face with people, the results usually are better.
Excellent. And maybe we can sneak one more question in. Several people, as you could tell, have been to the courses and talked about ways that they could supplement market data and the Nihito visits with more market data if they wanted to get more quantitative results.
Yeah, so the stuff we talked about today was by and large qualitative, and if you want to go to the next step, which is quantitative, then you have to introduce another level of rigor into the process, and we primarily teach surveys as a way to do that, because surveys are a really good quantitative research tool. They're relatively inexpensive. You can get data very quickly. They can be highly effective if you do them correctly. Many teams don't. But if you do, you can get a lot of data really quickly. So we're big fans of surveys, but that's not the only way to do it. If you read any of those hot texts that are out there today, like I referenced Lean Startup earlier, they're big fans of other forms of getting quantitative data, like experimentation and A/B testing are great ways to do that as well. So if we go out in the market and we form a hypothesis, based on market data and some people that we've talked to, maybe depending on your business model and your product, we could actually run an A/B test to test that hypothesis and see what we think. That's totally in line with our philosophy at Pragmatic Marketing of marrying the qualitative and the quantitative together to get better results. All right. Well, I know that there are probably a lot of other questions as well, and I'm going to commit to giving you answers to those too, but I also want to keep us on schedule. So if you have questions that you need answered, my contact info will be at the end of the presentation. Feel free to fire off your question to me via my email or on Twitter, and I'll be happy to get back to you. You just have to give me a day or two because, as you can imagine, I live on the airplane. So as we finish out today's session, let's return to that cold, icy parking lot from the beginning and our poor product manager sitting in his truck after 7 hours of conference calls. As you might have guessed, that product manager was me. And the conversation I was having was with myself. I was broken, I was demoralized, and I'll always recall a conversation I had with my boss, Terry, that week. He said, "Paul, you don't seem motivated. You're going through the motions. But most of all, you just don't seem happy." I realized after the fact that the reason I didn't feel happy was because I was letting down my team. I had a huge responsibility to drive change, but I had allowed myself to become a passenger. That was the moment that I decided that I wasn't going to allow myself to be trapped in the emails, firefights, and conference calls. I was going to be the president of my product. And later I was recruited out to a startup to run their product team, and the market has been my guiding light ever since. As a reminder of that, in my office at home, I keep a curious object. It's a chunk of concrete. It's about the size of my fist. And this is a chunk of Alcatraz prison that I got on a trip to San Francisco several years ago. I look at it as a reminder that if I'm not leading, I risk becoming imprisoned by other forces. Market knowledge is the key that unlocks that prison. There's always going to be those poor souls that toil in a prison of their own design. And if that's you, I salute your steadfast resolve to be pelted with the slings and arrows of opinions and emotion every day. But for those of you on this webinar that resolve to break with the past, like Kamal, Joyce, Mark, and Kevin did, I can tell you your future is bright. You can look forward to an organization that makes reasoned decisions based on a deep understanding of the market and what will yield the best business. And every discussion will start and end with the question, what problem are we solving? And the organization is going to look to you to drive that shift. As you grow and prosper, your role is going to expand, and your career will flourish. Ultimately, you are responsible for your situation. If you don't like it, now is the time to change it. And that's why I hope you'll join me in making 2015 the year of the market and the year that you propel your career into overdrive. If that's something that you need help with, or if you have a question that we weren't able to answer in today's session and you would like to reach me afterwards, then you will find my contact info right here, along with a picture of me wearing a tie. We hope you enjoyed today's session, and I hope you'll join us next month as well. And for now, I'll hand it back over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you everybody for joining us. It was an outstanding webinar. This is the first webinar of the year, and it kicks off our 2015 Box of the Month initiative, where we will highlight a different topic from the framework each month and provide extra information, insights, and implementation guidance in that area. The Box of the Month also drives our webinar topics, so here is a sneak peek at what you have to look forward to for the year. Thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the week.